Olivia, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much.
We were just talking off air about your studios.
Yes.
And I'm going to assume that your studios are an expression of you and your energy.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. And so that's basically where we're in the conversation, where you want to grow your business. And the basis of it is the joy, I think, of movement. I'm just making my own little interpretation. And I think it's, you're right about the nature of the energy and human beings and the potential for them to express along a corridor of joy. And dance has been around with civilizations for forever as one of those main ways that cultures and tribal cultures, etc., have expressed in a communal way, yet alone individually, their great energy. And usually, I think from my view, and I'm going to ask you a question, do you see the history of dance basically at the same time, without being not academically,
right,
but just the nature of being human and the nature of movement? Do you see that as now the hip hop is a contemporary expression, but can you go all the way back in history and say, yeah, people like moving?
Absolutely. Yeah. My gosh. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
I'm really excited to dive in.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't have the full extent of the academic knowledge of the history of dance, as you were saying, but it's evident that we have been craving movement as a community for generations, years, and that has evolved in different ways. And right now, the evolution for me is in dance fitness and in Madhouse dance, but it's been a part of the human species forever. And there's good reason for that. Like, there's so much, and I would love to hear your perspective on it too. There's so much to say about the feeling that you get when you're dancing in a community, when you're moving as one, even if you're not doing the exact same movements, like moving in synchronization to a beat, like there's something so euphoric about it. And people have known that for forever. And I think it's so powerful when everyone can get together and move and feel good and just tap into themselves and tap into something bigger. So yeah, definitely. I think about that a lot, how no matter what happens to, me in my life, my studio, whatever it is, like I will always have dance, and I'm doing something that's proven, it's been proven over and over again that people love to dance and people want community in that way. And it turns into a really great, third place of community for everyone. You have work, you have home, and now you have this dance studio that you get to go in with 23 other people and just move at the same time. And yeah, there's something super special about that.
Do you know what twirlers are?
No.
Do you know the Grateful Dead?
I know the Grateful Dead. I don't know what twirlers are.
Yeah, twirlers are the people that go to the Dead concerts, and their individuality, they'd be called twirlers because they would twirl individually, but yet at Dead concerts, and I've only been to one or two. I'm not a deadhead. I'm a live head. but sorry. but I think, when I think of what you were saying, even though you're using contemporary language, I think when I hear it, you said something about perspective. What is interesting, for example, at say a Grateful Dead concert, is you can observe the individuality. Everyone's dancing their own way. There's no instructor. There's nobody that's saying, hey, get with it. Let's keep this coordinated. It's absolutely the opposite. And yet at the same time, one of the things that is so delicious about that kind of experience, you can feel the thread of the universal aspect, almost the thread of the non-moving mover. At the same time, everyone's moving. It's a real phenomenon of the two aspects. You cannot move. It's not possible to move without having no movement, or you wouldn't be able to see the contrast.
Right. That's interesting.
So there's a still place for everybody. And what you're describing with the joy of hip-hop and your Madhouse Studios, which I think is a great name. I really do.
Thank you.
I love it. I like saying it.
Yeah.
And so you're right about it going to be kind of kind of imprint it on the chit or consciousness of people hearing it. But this kind of paradoxical state of being able to move, it comes from being able to be still.
That's so interesting. I've never thought about that,
Right.
but it makes sense.
Right. And hip hop is the contemporary expression. And actually, do you know what whirling dervishes are?
No, you're giving me a lot of terms I've never heard before.
Yeah, whirling dervishes, you'll be fascinated. Whirling dervishes are part of the Sufi sect of Islam. And they were around in 1100, 1200, like that. And in that area of the Ottoman Empire, which is now Iran and Iraq and those countries. And whirling dervishes, the whole purpose of being a whirling dervish, and it was very specific, very simple in a way, but they would whirl, and they had certain costumes, and they had to have their hands in certain positions. The purpose of which is they were whirling around, whirling and whirling and whirling, to kind of interact with the cosmic influences that are constantly coursing through creation, many of which are trying to incorporate themselves into the earth sphere. And they would whirl and whirl, and they'd whirl themselves into ecstasy or into this state in which they were whirling, but they were not moving.
When you say whirling,
They spin.
okay.
You can Google it. You'll find them. Yeah.
And you're talking about people.
Yeah.
Okay, love that.
Yeah. And they're whirling, and their outfits are very interesting. But Whirling Dervishes was a spiritual organization. The way they would create a conductivity of unifying with the spiritual aspect of creation was to whirl, and they became. I mean, it's very famous. They haven't been contemporary, but of course they've been doing this for thousands and thousands, for a couple of thousand years.
Wow.
But Whirling Dervish is the same kind of principle. So let me ask you something. So when you're in dancing, instructing, or even dancing at home and just playing with your expression,
Yeah.
do you ever feel the still state simultaneously? Almost like what's called being in the zone?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I didn't think of it as a still state because it's almost counterintuitive because you're not, but that makes so much sense that there's an inner stillness almost when your body is moving on the outside. And yeah, 100%. When I am dancing, whether it's creating my choreography or mostly in class, I would say, when I'm in the process of teaching, I am so in the zone. Doesn't matter what's going on in my life or anything, I am only in that moment, and nothing else enters my mind other than being in that moment, other than teaching that class effectively. And I think part of that is just making sure that, you're teaching an effective class and this is your job, you're doing it, but it's so rewarding because it just puts you so in that zone, in the state of stillness, in a state of flow, and nothing else can enter. And it's so therapeutic because I can't think of anything else. And I feel so good after because it's amazing.
Well, you
and
feel free.
I feel free, absolutely.
But let me ask you, do you ever have the experience of being absolutely free from the movement at the same time you're moving? Where you're almost witnessing yourself?
That's so interesting. I don't know in the context of teaching my type of classes if I've felt that.
Have you ever felt that in any other way?
I think I have, definitely. So I do a bit of meditation, and I certainly have moments where I feel almost, like I'm looking at myself. It's so hard for me to put into words. But yeah, I do think I've felt that before. And also, if we're talking about dance specifically, it certainly feels like a spiritual expression for me because I don't know if you know this, but I was not a dancer at all growing up, but it's always been a way for me to express myself and my emotions. And I've just always felt called to move and to dance. So when I would dance before starting Madhouse 3 years ago, it would just be, in my room by myself or in the less healthy environment of a club or a bar or whatever that may have made a party, whatever. And I never danced in studios or really danced for myself. And I like that you were talking about the whirling dervishes.
Dervish.
Is that what it was?
Dervish.
Dervish.
Yep.
Because it made me think of when I first got the idea for Madhouse. It was at a time where I was imagining myself like, what is my highest version of self? And I would go into these meditations and I just pictured myself twirling. Like I pictured myself dancing. And that was so weird to me because I wasn't a dancer at the time. And that to me was my highest version of self, a version of me that was moving and twirling and spinning, exactly like you were talking about. And a couple days after that meditation was when I was doing this workshop, and the first thing that I wrote down when I was writing down things I enjoyed doing was dance. And it all kind of came together in a super, to me, magical moment of, whoa, this is what I need to do with my life. But it was such a weird realization because I wasn't a dancer at all. But I really felt like it was spiritual, like coming down from the divine, like this is your purpose in life. And even though I hadn't danced, I felt myself spinning in that way. And yeah, so now when I'm dancing, I don't know that if I'm teaching a class, I feel like I'm in a different state, but I do feel so satisfied and happy after. So I'm sure that state does work in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. I think there are a number of words I caught.
Yeah.
One would be, I would throw in joy.
Yeah.
You said a lot, and I kept hearing you say joy without saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're right.
The joy of it. The other is the divine coming down. And I would say, no, I think you touched the divine from within, from the quiet place to see the action of yourself.
I like
and
that.
You said, I'm going to do that. But that, meaning the action, the dynamic action of dancing, I think was spawned by the dynamic action of silence. Because you said in meditation or in some quiet state,
right,
you saw the active state of yourself.
Yeah.
And that the quietest dynamic state is the state of the divine. I mean, or this, you use divine instead of the other words that people can use. It's a much nicer word to make contrast from only being human. But yeah, this is great. So, and this ordained thing that you're talking about made you feel incumbent. I'm ordained. This is an ordination. I know this because I can see that happen. I'm giving words to what I'm seeing happen.
Yeah.
And I think it's fascinating that at a young time in your life, you had this synergy and this serendipity and this connection that kind of set you up to actually do the active life that's probably totally appropriate for you to be doing in this incarnation you're in now.
Yeah, definitely. And just to go off of what you were talking about, how it came from silence, it made me think of, as dancers, a lot of the time we talk about how, like, I'll just be sitting there and I'll come up with choreography in my mind, not actually dancing. And sometimes it's harder to come up with choreography when you're actually trying to dance and move. And it's easier when you're in your mind more. All the time, dancers will be driving. Like, I'll be at the studio and someone will come in and be like, I just made up a dance in the car, because you're in this almost like hypnotic state driving. Yeah, I would love your perspective on that, because we're listening to music, our bodies can't move, and we come up with all these dances because we're almost coming from within. I'm
going to give you another word. You are out of your mind, and that's why you can be Madhouse, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, you weren't in your mind, or you wouldn't create Madhouse.
Okay.
You were out of your mind.
Out of my mind.
Meaning the mind wasn't the aspect that was the conductor of the vision of the possibilities.
Okay.
Because the mind, when you say mind, you're going to be referencing in a large part the intellect. And you're telling me that you went to a place in which things came to you, almost like intuitively.
Yeah.
So I'm saying you were out of your mind.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Works for me.
You weren't out of your mind. You were out of your mind. Yes. And Madhouse is a great way to describe being out, in this context, out of your mind.
Yeah, it's a very apt name now, actually.
Yeah. So there you go. But I think it's fascinating. Yeah, I think the notion of the still point, or being still or quiet, has more potential. And it creates the potential of the action of the stillness without sounding too wacky. So dance is an expression of non-movement. It's an expression of the non-moving state. It's an expression of the non-moving state, which is this quiet state or still state or that state can actually become transcendent, which you're beyond all action itself, even bodily function. That's another discussion. But yeah, I think you're in your, in the I'm going to use, I'll get a little fancy away from inner peace, which is the way I describe what I do, which is very mundane. But actually, you just described that you were a state of inner peace. And the inner peace was enough to give you a view of what you wanted to do outside. If you didn't have the inner peace, you wouldn't have seen it. If that makes any sense.
Yeah,
so it's
definitely.
all paradoxical. But yet, these two aspects are the aspects of creation. There's a dynamism that's purely quiet and simple, and it's just filled with pure potential, only potential, not expressed potential, unexpressed, pure potential. And when you say go within, and all of a sudden you came out with some architectural expression of the potential that you tapped into, which fits you. Dancer, studio, teacher. You're a teacher of movement based on experiencing the non-moving state more clearly.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I've never thought about it that way.
That's. I mean, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth or thoughts in your head.
You're just making me see everything a different way. And I would be curious because I think part of the reason I haven't thought about it in the sense of dance as an expression of, how did you say it? Like the stillness before.
It's an expression of not dance, no dancing,
dance, right?
Of no movement. It's a movement based on experiencing non-movement.
Yeah, and so
that's where
didn't
the joy.
grow up
That's where the
dancing
joy comes in. Yes,
or studying dance. But I would be curious, like Kira, who's one of my instructors and also co-hosted my podcast. She danced her whole life and studied dance in college, and that might be something that a concept that she's more familiar with. But I'm going to take it to her and ask because
generally
you're making me think of it in a different way.
But it was your intuition. Intuition is a much more powerful thing than an educational approach, by the way. Much more. That's why it's you that's doing this.
That's true. I think that my intuition has guided me in just about every single decision that I've made as far as my business goes. I really feel my gut and trust what comes. Like, for example, with the second studio, I spent months looking for second locations, and I just peeked through the door of what is now my second location when I was first kind of touring it, and was like, yep, that's the one. Like, I could just feel it, and it's hard to explain. And it's the same feeling that I got when I walked in my first studio, the Morena studio, the original studio that exists now. And I just know somehow.
That's another expression of not being in your mind.
Yeah.
You were out of your mind. Hence, you could connect.
Yeah.
People, when they're in their mind or in their intellect, they can't connect to this field of potential.
Yeah, totally.
Does this make sense? And what happens with humankind is everyone has somehow organized in hierarchy the way they're supposed to be. They're going further and further and further away from the field of pure potential.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we actually keep addressing connection as though it's to people, places, and things. The connection that we're trying to make as human beings is to some underlying transcendental, beyond comprehension place, which is that's my language for you today, is out of your mind.
Yeah.
And that's what you just described, in my view.
Yeah.
And this is a big blessing. Now, I'll make a little quick change. So do you have that same value of energy, meaning this energy of knowing, without being instructed to know, without reading, without writing, without taking a test, for example? Do you have that same intuitive nature outside of the dance world in your personal life?
I think I do. I think that it's so strong when it comes to career and my business and dance, because I've just always felt so confident that I'm on the right path in that way, I guess, or that what will happen is meant to happen. And I've talked about this on my podcast before in other areas of my life, like love and relationships. That was always an area that I didn't feel super confident in, and I don't think I was always able to trust my gut in as much. But I think now I do. I think I'm much better about it, and I think I do use that energy and my intuition in all areas of my life. But I think starting with career and academics, because I was so sure of myself in that field, allowed me to build that confidence and trust in that energetic and move it into other areas of my life. And now I feel really happy with the way that I'm able to like guide myself and or the way that I'm able to follow that intuition.
Yeah, because the process of discrimination is governed by the intuition, not by the intellect, or by psychology, or by social psychology, or about peer group pressure.
Yeah.
None of that exists when the intuition is present. So now you're free to see. The vision is spontaneously clear.
Yeah.
But that's why I asked, because generally relationships and all these other kinds of achievement-oriented processes that human beings go through is what cuts us off from that connection to this underlying field of pure potential, in which intuition is. And intuition doesn't involve an intersection. It doesn't involve a choice. It's too innocent for that.
Absolutely.
It just spontaneously represents itself.
Yeah.
And even saying the right path, which you said at one point, is a way you would describe it, but it in itself doesn't even have a path.
Yeah.
It just is.
It just is. Absolutely. It almost doesn't leave you an option. Like that's why I
There's
feel
no
so
choice.
confident about what I'm doing,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
I don't feel like I have a choice. It's not that I'm, being forced to do something, but it's so clear and it's so obvious to me that this is the path. And
So now,
the more I can trust it, the more I see that it's showing itself. But I like that you're clarifying intellect and intuition, because I do think when I'm more in my intellect, I'm not sure if I'm using that correctly, but things almost feel more confusing and more jumbled and less clear and
where they're strained,
absolutely.
If
And when
there's-
that's able to clear,
then it's super.
intuition is so much easier. It's so much more trustworthy.
It's super fluid.
Yeah.
These are terms that are described even in quantum field theory.
Right.
Tension and compression is a dog on a rope kind of thing. Well, that's decision making.
Yeah. And I need that.
Yeah, but the superfluid frictionless flow is entirely different. It's a connection to an underlying omnipresent field of pure potential, pure intelligence, not intelligence, intelligence.
What's that?
Intelligence. It's the cosmic intelligence. And so if I would go further and get a little bit, I'd say wacky with the nomenclature, you're in your dharma, D-H-A-R-M-A, which means the perfect place to be in this lifetime, in this incarnation. That's pretty good.
I love that.
Yeah, and I have in my database, I have very successful people in the way we describe success. I have businessmen. I've got all kinds of people. I've got kids. I've got clergy. I have dancers. I have all different kinds of people in my database. But every now and then, especially when I'm mentoring, I'll come across somebody who I would say, you actually are in your dharma. Because even though they're doing something entirely different than the joy of dancing, they may be doing the joy of building a business, which can be really rigorous and hard. But the nature of their acumen or their ability has little to do with their academic background and more to do with what you described as being connected. And so it makes it more effortless. There's not strain in it.
Yeah.
And the joy of the doing is as great, if not greater, than the joy of the result of the doing.
So true.
And that's what that's what you're describing to me in yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. And it just gets me excited even hearing you say that, because sometimes I have to remind myself of that, because I really do believe that I am in my dharma. And
well,
there are moments where,
forget about believing it.
I am.
Well, you are very clearly.
Yeah.
Just kind of go, there it is. Okay, thank you. Praise Jesus. Or what are you going to do with it? Yeah, it's okay. It works for me. But very clearly.
Thank you.
For whatever it's worth.
I think that I always need to remind myself of that, because you're right. I am in it. And because I am dancing and I'm also building a business. And there are days where I'm so bogged down by just the reality of
the practical
that and the practical stuff.
You're inundated. It's called being overshadowed. In other words, the sunshine of you, this superfluid, frictionless, slow movement person who's organized it in a certain kind of business because it's got value for the world and for human beings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. At some point, the sunshine gets overshadowed. So earlier I said to you, do you ever have this experience while you're dancing where you're witnessing, where you're not really, it would be almost a description of not being in the body that's moving at the same time you're doing it. You're free. That's freedom.
Yeah.
You're free from the laws of nature, like gravity and all that other kind of stuff. Yeah. You feel almost like you're just watching yourself display yourself in dance. That's a whirling dervish, by the way. That's the purpose of a whirling dervish. Is they whirl themselves to a place where there's two of them simultaneously. Oh. The one that's whirling and the one that's still. Wow. Which is the state that human beings need to come into more and more, despite what they do for a living. Has nothing to do with this reality of the self. The cosmic self is an omnipresent, dominant feature, and the individual self is an expression of the cosmic self. And once you start to uncover this other cosmic nature of the self, the individual self is the one that's doing, and the cosmic self is not doing anything. And so you have two selves, one that's still and actually witnesses the other one. And it's totally joyful, by the way. Sounds freaky.
No,
but I think cool. I would suggest highly you've already been there.
Yeah. I bet I have.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to imagine because I feel I'm so concentrated on teaching when I'm teaching, but I think because that's structured, and perhaps if I were more in my like free dance or just dancing for fun and not for like teaching a class that's structured in a certain way, that those are the moments maybe where I'm more in that state because I'm not focused on doing something specific, but rather I'm just moving in the moment in a way that feels, in a way that's unplanned and just spontaneous.
No, there's no training for that.
Yeah.
That's evolution. That means you're at a high level of frequency, so to speak. But I know you've been there without trying to make you recall those moments.
Yeah.
But I know that very clearly. I can see it. But the thing, making a really cheap segue for what I do, is I'm trying to take an individual, no matter what they do, and have them uncover more of that still state. Why? So they're less stressed, so they're less strained, so there's less anxiety, less tension, less depression, etc. Or if they want more, I could say more happiness, more harmony, more health. If they want less or more, it doesn't matter to me. And so when I look at you and I see the freshness and the aliveness of this state that I'm describing, you're an example of one who's uncovering, enlivening, and expanding that condition. It has nothing to do with performance or what one does. They need to be freer and freer from the stress and strain of doing, which is what you're describing happens to you when your intuition and the serendipity comes. And in fact, even right from the beginning, it seems to me you say that when you're in your room, 8 or 9 years old, and you're dancing, you're free.
Yeah.
Free from what? Free from doing, not doing your homework. You're free from doing the dancing even. Does this sound a little wacky?
Yeah, it does.
Right. But can you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's the freedom part that you are experiencing while the movement's going on.
I'm trying to picture it.
Well, I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I see you, I hear your voice, you're talking, your eye, but you're all lit up.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. And so the only thing that overshadows you is what you said. The sun goes away a little bit when you're doing the practical applications of the doing of your daily life. Yeah, and that's the doing part. And what happens for most people, we do stuff, and that's all. We're only doing, and we're overshadowed. We're not free from the doing. What happens when enlightenment starts to grow in individuals, or inner peace in Michael's language, is you're free from two things: the contingency of the outcome, and you're free from the actual doing. You don't experience the doing, which is done.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So I think it's great. But you're very
I like the freedom from the contingency of the outcome as well.
Yeah, that's the problem with mankind, especially now, is we're still in fight or flight.
Yeah.
That's contingent. Heaven and hell, the contingent. What is that? That's goofy shit. No, it is. It's not right. It's not fair.
Yeah.
It's not accurate. It's not the truth. Human beings are made to be free. Free from what? Free from only being human. So there's another aspect, which is what you described when you're dancing. You're in some other aspect, especially before you started to build something. Now, I'm not saying you've gone away from that, but at the same time, you said my language, you were overshadowed, meaning that the practical covered over the joy a little bit because now you got to do stuff.
Yeah,
you got to sign the lease. What the hell? Why does it cost that much? Or how am I going to get people in the studio?
Exactly.
And those are all the contingent aspects, which cripple the flow. So the sunshine, the sun of you gets overshadowed once you have to focus in a certain way. As this continues to develop, now it's even going to be a cheaper segue. What I teach frees someone up consistently over time from the contingent aspect of a result. That's crippling to the freedom that you described, that you experience when you're in this joy. And I saw a very little small clip of you dancing, but I saw you walk in the hallway. That was enough.
Oh.
No, I mean, I saw it. I mean, it's very clear. So these kinds of times when you have to default to just being human and do all the human things, build the studio, recruit teachers, market for students, take the money, find out if it's profitable, pay the rent, blah, 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 blah. That's fine. That's just practical aspects. Eventually, you'll be doing all of that without experiencing the same strain that seems to come with the performance. The funny thing is, I'm going to use the word performance. Those are more performance-oriented for you than actually when you're dancing.
That's so true.
Yeah. Because you have to perform or execute a document. It's like performance. But when you're dancing, I get the feeling that it doesn't feel like a performance.
Yeah. No, it doesn't at all. And that's one of the biggest things about my studio and the way that I teach is I try to free everyone from performance, because although the class is structured and I give them certain moves and they're following along with me, because I find that the easiest segue for people into dance is to have structure. And if I were to just get in there and be like, just move however you want, everyone would be shy and confused and not be as into it as they are. But when I give them some structure and then freedom within that structure of, okay, here's the move, but you remember you're not performing, you're doing this to feel good and to tap into yourself, and you can make this move whatever you want it to be. If you don't like it like that, make it like this, make it like that, make it your own, have fun with it, add your style. And so I think that that's what I do on a micro level in my classes, and then also on a macro level. And talking about, freeing yourself from the result of things, I think going back to the intuition, I want so badly for the business to succeed. And I think sometimes I get so attached to that outcome, but then other times I remember my intuition and that I don't have a choice, and that even if it fails, it doesn't matter because this is the only choice for me. You know what I mean? And I think that's what gives me that certainty and power. And, I'll go through all the motions, I'll sign the lease, do all the business things, be overshadowed, but always try to tap back into that.
Yeah, I think it just grows. I mean, there's different ways to grow it to be that way, but that's another discussion in a way. But in general, that's one of the reasons I teach what I teach is to have people uncover, enliven, and expand that state where they're free from the contingency. I don't care what they do, and I don't care that they have a desire to do it, but to do it with contingency means they're not there. I mean, the person that you like so much of you goes away when you're doing that stuff. That's what you're saying. That's the overshadowed component that I'm describing. But eventually, all of us as human beings will be free from the doing when the evolution takes place. That's why I'm in a hurry, because I think the way the world's going is not so great. So I'm in a hurry.
You're in a hurry.
Yeah, I want to get some things done while I'm still here.
I want to hear more about your teachings and kind of what gives you the freedom that we're talking about in my...
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, for me, I'm not some newcomer in the 21st century to meditation. I started meditating in 1972. And I was young, brash, sex, drugs, rock and roll, was the way I was experiencing life. I was always kind and fun and funny, but my main attention was on what we used to call sex, drugs, rock and roll. So I was lucky enough, without belaboring the entire story, just to fall into something that seemed to me to make me interested in what could that be. And I had a lot of serendipitous things happen. I'd never described them as serendipitous or destiny or fate until about a couple of years ago, when someone pointed out, do you see all the things that happened in your life at these little demarcations, these little intersections of life? And then I said, yeah, but I never felt that destiny or fate at the time that was happening. So I started meditating a long time ago, and once I learned to meditate with this incredibly effortless style, very effortless, hard to even describe how effortless it is, yet it was ancient and time-tested, and there was a lot of research on it, which was relatively important at a certain point in time, especially in the 70s, because the world was moving to an age of science in which things had to be validated and verified as having value, because you could study and do research. And so that there was a component in that kind of, I would say, accelerated my not belief, but my sense of, okay, this has got some efficacy besides feeling good. So I started that style, and once I started that style, I recognized the difference between the other two styles I was doing, each of which had either concentration or contemplation in it. Mindfulness is contemplation. And I didn't know any of the neuroscience at the time. I didn't know any of the, I would say, ways to make different descriptions of the three. There's only three ways to use the mental activity. Either focus it, you can monitor it, or mindfulness, or you can somehow offer it an opportunity to go within itself and find the deeper aspects of itself. And somehow you found that naturally and spontaneously. But the systematic thing that I ended up teaching since 1975 is this effortless style. Once there's effort in anything, then the individual is really going to get involved. So the universal aspect is eliminated from possibility, largely. Or it would have to be lifetimes after lifetimes of refining concentration until you finally left that train and moved to the other track of effortlessness. So I think for me, I'm blessed in the way that I was just dumb enough. No, really, I got on this simple. I say this a lot, but I got on a simple road early, and I stayed on it. I never what I call guru bounce. I never got evangelical about it. I never told anyone about my direct experiences during meditation. I have an interesting story of starting something and then changing a little bit and then going back to the old self and back and forth for a while until about some major, what people call spiritual experiences, start to occur in the mid-90s, and then a couple more in the early 2000s that propelled or accelerated me into a place in which I became a little bit more of a living expression, which is what I see in you. You're kind of a living expression of what I'm describing. That's what I'm trying to say to you often.
Got it.
You are that when I see you. Now, you may go through problems. You lose it when you go into certain aspects.
Yeah.
But you know that that's really what you are. It's just that you don't like necessarily when you have to do the negotiation component of transactions. But at the same time, what I'm saying to eventually, that will be the state you're in all the time, even though you do all your human stuff. You're free from the doing. But I was lucky. That's the way I look at myself, honestly. I didn't read a bunch of shit. People, I mean, I do now, but reading now for me only is a way to stabilize or support the experiences. No reading gave me the experience. It was actually the sit down and shut up thing that I did, which is what I call my book, Sit Down and Shut Up.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, you get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that make sense? You get exactly what I'm saying. There are a lot of announcers in this spiritual, quasi-spiritual world. They announce, but they never have been they've never played. That makes sense. There's announcers at sporting events, and they make all these great cliches and announcements and stuff, but they don't really know what they're talking about. They're talking about it, but they don't really know. Does that make sense? And so for me, I was lucky. I was lucky enough just to sit down and shut up. I mean, and that's the way I approach it.
And so is that kind of what the effortlessness is? Like
there's a very specific technique. Yeah. But I come from an ancient tradition, a long tradition, 6,000 years old. So different custodians passed this down over the years. And oftentimes it was threatened to be lost, and it has been lost because it gets to be like a telephone game. Yep. That one. And by the time it gets to it's no longer what the person said at the beginning. It gets distorted. Much like the Ganges, that spiritual river in India starts at the base, at the top of the Himalayas. Well, the water is very pure, totally pure. It's unfettered. As it comes down toward the villages, then the villagers are washing their clothes or doing this. As it gets toward the cities, it's the same water. But as that gets more hands on it, it gets more things on it, it ends up to be a problem in which there's a distortion and the water becomes no longer pure as it did at the inception. Much like that with these spiritual techniques have been around. By the time they go through a generation or two, it gets to be like a telephone game. And there are less experiencers and more announcers, which is what's happened in the 21st century. So I have a really snarky, kick-ass attitude. I was an athlete, so I understand, a little bit about the competitive spirit. Yeah. And so I'm a bit snarky in my own way. That's why the book is Sit Down and Shut Up. You cannot get to the states that I'm describing that you've had intuitively and that you are developing, whether you know it or not. You can't get to those states by thinking about them or someone telling you about them. Doesn't work that way. You're going to have to sit down and shut up. Yeah. Michael's language. Yeah. So I'm kind of the no bullshit, simple guy. I keep it simple. I don't roll out a bunch of Sanskrit. I can, but I just kind of want. There is no human being that can't uncover, enliven, and expand inner peace. That is not possible. The rate that they can accelerate their evolution can be different, depending on the conditions that are alive, etc. But every human being is already ordained. This is why it's so fun to talk to you. Every human being is already ordained with that. If you're in human form, this nervous system can reflect that state that you're talking about, that you get into when you were dancing before you even structured this whole Madhouse world. That was the place. And why it went down that way doesn't matter. Meaning sometimes people are escaping something, so they do something with themselves to make themselves feel good. It does not matter. The state itself of that freedom and that intuition is available to any human being. In Michael's way, you got to sit down and shut up and do the inner peace meditation method. And I come from, I was blessed also to be privy to and saying hung out with wouldn't be quite the right way, but exposed to and with some very significant, real, authentic teachers, not of the 21st century. So I was blessed that way. Yeah.
And now you can be that teacher for people.
Yeah, I mean, I just teach the technique.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone following me.
No?
Yeah, I want them to uncover, enliven, and expand. I can have them keep stepping forward with that in many ways. I have a big emporium besides just the technique. But I think for me, I look out and I see the suffering of mankind. They still suffer, almost like a fight or flight response for a caveman. Mm-hmm. People really are, this contingency thing that I was talking about is really based on fear.
Absolutely.
If I don't get the promotion, I won't be able to provide for my family. If I don't get the A on this math test, I'm not going to get into Stanford.
Yeah.
That's in my view, that's freaking criminal.
So how do you fix that? Because in some cases, just again, the practicality of being a human, like, if you don't make money, you can't buy food and you can't provide for your family. So if someone is in a situation that is more, you could call it fight or flight because they really have to.
Everyone is in that one.
Yeah.
Because you're in existence.
Yeah.
If you're in existence, you got a problem.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to be in existence. I mean, that's a pretty big problem.
Yeah.
Yet at the same time, there's already a solution provided when you're in existence. That's why you're in existence as well. So I think the practical aspects of somebody suffering, they can't eat, or food deprivation, et cetera, and all these other kinds of situations that happen to people from all kinds of depravity and different kinds of ways that people are functioning on planet Earth, doesn't preclude anyone from uncovering a state of inner peace. That's the basis to create solutions. Because the problem is that people don't have that equanimity or that harmony or that peace inside. All health issues have some origin or some complicating representation based on stress. That's well known. It's not me making something up. So when you look at stress is just the inability to adapt to situations that seem to be overloading you. So if you get more and more people in this state of, coming to a Buddhist term, equanimity or harmony or peace, then you have a platform. Then you have some stability. And it's not dependent on whether you have food or not, that stability. That stability actually creates a little bit of opportunity to have creative means or ways to get what you need to continue to survive this fight or flight jungle that you sense you're in. That has to happen first in order for anyone to have any kind of vision of possibilities. They move away from the condemnation aspect. I'm condemned to this. That's not true. It can look true, but it's not true. And so if I teach someone just to sit down and shut up with the method I teach, and they become more calm, or they become more relaxed, okay, good start. Now, if I can teach someone that wants to accelerate their evolution from one place to the permanent state of permanent happiness, that too, depending on where this individual is, where I meet them, I can accelerate their evolution. That helps the whole planet. So inner peace sounds mundane compared to samadhi or nirvana, if you want to throw those words around. I'm very familiar with them. I'm very familiar with the states. But for me, I keep it simple. Mankind, individuals need more inner peace. This system has to be settled down. Has to be quieted. That's where the potential is. You're an example of someone who's already described that. You're describing it in terms of your own life and your own desire package. And I love moving. I love movement. When I was a kid, I loved it. It made me feel free. I'm using my words now. I felt the joy of it. Now I get to teach it. And hopefully other people are going to feel the joy of it, because your impression is that other people are going to feel like you feel. And
that's the hope.
But you can't make them feel that way, but you open the door for the opportunity to be there.
Good point.
Yeah. And that's a pretty damn good contribution. And so if you make it a business and You go through the paperwork world and the transactional world, fine. Still the deliverable for you, the intention of the deliverable coming from you, the authentic deliverer, is the joy that you're describing and the freedom from the antagonism of being human. Does this make sense? Mm-hmm. That's what you're doing. I mean, I'm just putting different words on it.
No, that feels very rewarding to think about it in some terms that vague. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. You don't have to say at the beginning of the class, I'm going to take you further and further away from the fight or flight response, you little cavemen. You know. So, I mean, but that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you're basically, you can couch it and say, I give you a few moments or an hour of time where you're free from the antagonism of your daily life. All I do is give them a systematic way to do that on a daily basis without me.
Yeah.
Because what I teach is self-sufficient. So I don't need them. I don't need them at the steps of my temple.
So are you in that like constant state of happiness?
Yeah, I mean, that's the dominant feature. Yes, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but that's how I can see you.
Ah.
But right, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. That state is the normal state, by the way. And I wrote in my book, I was writing the first meditation of this style of meditation, because I did two other kinds, concentration, contemplation, and then this style. And when I did this style, which is very effortless, very innocent, there's no trying, there's no managing, there's no guiding, there's no directing, there's no manipulating, there's no controlling the mind at all. Mm-hmm. There is an influence that we use, but the influence is very soothing to the mental activity. But I can remember when I walked to my first instruction day with a teacher, and I walked along a riverbed in Pennsylvania, along the Lackawanna River. And this area of Pennsylvania is coal mining and industrial, and it's a kick-ass place, man. I mean, I used to say I could fight my way in and fight my way out of any bar in this town, because you had to.
Yeah.
It's that kind of kick-ass place. So I walked to the instruction. I walked back the same way. And when I walked back, everything was different.
Wow.
Yeah, everything was different. The colors were more brilliant. The sounds were more crisp. My footsteps were I could hardly feel gravity. I felt like flow. And the joy that resurrected into me, I could feel that I was just one big smile.
I love that.
That's what I experienced. Just one big smile. And that goes away. Hence, I followed the direction of the teaching. Meditated twice a day for 20 minutes. That's still the way I teach it. And this evolution to where that state, that smile, happy state, became the dominant feature. But it took me time. But the time I spent was this time. Meaning I was spending time connecting to the superfluid, frictionless flowing aspect. I wasn't sitting there saying, how much of that did I have today? I wasn't quantifying it. I don't do any of that in my teaching. I don't journal how much I had or what I thought I had. I sit down, do it, I get up and I do my daily life, which is why this technique is, I think, especially wonderful at this point in time for human beings. Because I don't tell anybody to stop anything.
Yeah.
I only tell them to incorporate this in. I don't tell them what to be. I don't tell them you're a dancer, you're a theologian, you're a physicist. I don't tell them you're this or that. None of that. I just go here, sit down and shut up twice a day.
That's awesome.
Well, they do waking, dreaming, sleeping, right? Let me ask you something.
Sure.
So if you're doing the waking, dreaming, sleep states, you know the distinctions. I mean, you probably never thought about, but they're distinct.
Yeah.
Sleep, there's no experience. The mind's not experiencing, the body's at a state of rest. In the waking state, it's the opposite. The mind is experiencing, it's using the intellect, the ego, and all the parts of it, and the body's active. In the dream state, the mental activity is illusory, and yet the body's at some state of rest. There's a fourth state, described by a deeply rested body and a more alert mind than even in the waking state. That's the state that comes when people sit down and shut up with what I teach. And so there's a whole other state. It's very similar to the one you're trying to describe. In context, you're using dance and movement. And that's why I was saying, yeah, but that movement is coming from something that's not moving. The way you can see the movement is on the basis of the not moving thing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yep. And so and you want both of those to be lively, because one is the field of pure potential, the other one is expressed potential. The non-moving state is pure potential, only potential. The active state is the state of potential in differences or active. That's a state that's missing on a daily basis for most human beings. They do waking, dreaming, sleeping. They don't do this other state.
Yeah. I've definitely experienced that other state when I've done meditations as well. Like your body is so rested, and obviously I've never done your specific technique before, and I now really want to know what it is. So I'll look into it.
Well, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, but I have meditated, and yeah, my mind has been super alert, more alert than the waking state, like you said. And
at the same time, your body's deeply rested.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can sense that, what did you call it? The pure potential. Like you can feel it.
Yeah, you're very familiar with it. That's why
Yeah.
I'm complimenting you.
Thank
Why
you.
the butterflies?
I don't know. I love them. I think they're so magical, and just the classic that it started as a caterpillar and evolves and transitions and just grows into something new.
Yep. That's why.
Yeah.
You just said it.
Yeah.
They're an expression of you, of how you're understanding yourself. That's what I use emojis every now and then. I wonder, is that goofy? You know, I'll put an emoji to somebody and I'll look at their text and I'll go, they didn't use an emoji. They probably hate them. And I just sent over an emoji. So I just do what I think. But one of my favorite is the blue butterfly.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I love that one.
And then the balloon.
The balloon?
You ever see the red balloon and the blue butterfly?
I don't think I use the balloon very often, but I will now.
But you see the essence of the energy you're describing, you know, like, yeah, this is great. So yeah, you've had some wonderful experiences very clearly. What's your family history, if I might be so bold?
Sure, yeah. I am from San Diego, from Poway, North County. And I kind of grew up in suburbia. 2 little brothers, so I'm the oldest, and my mom and my dad. My dad passed away when I was 19, so that would have been 2015 from brain cancer. So that was kind of like the first, honestly, just had a very standard upbringing, great family, just good stuff, you know, just typical high school concerns, no real problems or adversity or anything. And so, yeah, when my dad got sick, it was pretty fast. And that was the first time my family had ever really like been through anything like that. But we're really close, and I think that brought us closer. This tattoo is actually one that my family has for my dad. It's just our last name is Kingston, so it's a crown, and 5 points for the 5 of us. So that was kind of like a fun little.
So that's honoring your family.
Yeah, exactly.
That's sweet. Charming.
Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, we're still quite close, and it's evolved into a different, you know, it's grown because my mom has a new partner now, and I have a partner, and my brother has a partner, and we're growing and evolving in different ways, but staying close. And I think that much like a butterfly, it's just transformed into something new, you know?
Yeah. No, it's very cool. And it's fun, you know, I mean, you described your family as relatively, I'm going to use mundane words, I guess, or simple words, balanced, normal, not too much wacky stuff. When your father was diagnosed with brain cancer, you said he said he passed when you were 15.
19.
Oh, 19.
Sorry, it was in 2015.
Oh, got it. So I just probably missed that. So when he was diagnosed, how old were you then?
18.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was just a couple months. It was like 3 months.
What did he do for a living?
He was in sales, like kind of like computer hardware sales. Worked in partnership with Boeing, different company called Veterans Trading. Yeah.
So that was a shock to the family.
Definitely. Yeah, it was total shock. Like I said, we had never experienced anything like that. And my brothers were still in high school. I just finished my freshman year of college, and yeah, really scary. Just like dealing with something so unknown that you've never really had. I had grandparents pass away or anything like that, but it just, when someone's so young, like he was 51, is all of a sudden out of nowhere diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Like we weren't expecting it. And within less than 3 months passes away. Like it was just so, it wasn't as fast as if it was like an accident, a car crash or whatever. Like
it was abrupt.
But it was quite abrupt, and just crazy that at the diagnosis, it's already stage 4. It's like, what? How did this happen so quickly? The doctor said that it developed 3 months before that. So it was just super...
it was an aggressive.
Aggressive, yeah. Thank you. I was like, what's the word I'm looking for?
It's an ugly word.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Even more ugly now when it relates to your father.
Yeah.
Aggressive.
Yeah, totally.
It's ugly when it's out here in normal everyday life, actually.
Yeah.
It's an ugly word.
Definitely.
But so did you spend time with your dad during the months that he was very, very sick?
So he was diagnosed toward the end of summer. So I was starting my sophomore year in college. And one thing that my parents told me, where they were like, we don't want to pull you out of school, because we didn't know how fast it was going to be. There was no like, yeah, it's going to be 3 months. It could have been a year, and my dad had a really great college experience at his college. He was in a fraternity. I was in a sorority, and he really wanted me to like continue to have the college experience and go to school, because I was going up to school in Seattle. So I wasn't down here.
Where were you going to school?
University of Washington.
Huskies?
Yep, yeah. Exactly. And he didn't want me to miss out on any of that. And so I would basically go up, and I think every other weekend I would fly down here. So, it was actually really beautiful. Like a bunch of high school families that we knew, just people from Poway chipped in to like basically a fund for me to fly back and forth from Seattle, which was lovely. And, so I came down every other weekend, and that's something I've actually like beat myself up about in the more recent years. Is like, obviously if I had known if it was going to be 3 months, like maybe I would have just stayed down here, you know what I mean? But I have to remember that that's what they wanted me to do. But it's kind of tough to be like, I feel like I should have stayed down here, but there's no point in
you can't, looking back over a crooked road will never make it straight.
Yeah, so true.
So I think it is fine.
But no, it was a lot to go through, but I, loved my dad so much, and still love my dad, obviously. And I think about him regularly and what he would think of what I'm doing now, and just like all that stuff. And sometimes my mom was like, your dad would be so proud of you and what you're doing. And now I'm going to start crying. But yeah, that's been big. Sorry, I don't know why I'm crying. Because I don't talk about it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some charm in your family.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. This is, part of the blessing and your own charm. Yeah. So, and when it all happened, then you went back to school.
Yeah.
And then how were you when you went back to school? Did you feel that you were changed in certain ways?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think that I bottled up until about like 3.5, maybe just 3 years ago. I think I bottled up most of it, just because I felt like my dad would have wanted me to like keep going. So I went back to school and like did all the things and went to parties right away, and I didn't have the ability to like go inward yet. Like I hadn't meditated yet. I hadn't been to therapy yet. I didn't have the coping mechanisms that I have now. And so I just kind of went on with life as normal. And I had really supportive friends and really supportive family. But yeah, I think that also being in a college environment that's just unhealthy, like I just partied all the time and too much. And yeah, I just didn't feel like myself. And I think that plus what I had been through and like all those bottled up emotions, it was all a blur. Like, I don't remember a lot of college, I think, just because it was like a very uncertain time. And I don't think I like to think about that time. And all of a sudden a year went by after my dad passed away. And I was like, whoa, the world has moved on and I'm not okay, you know, like a year later, because I hadn't processed it and I thought that I had processed it, but I don't think I had. And so, yeah, really only probably a little over 3 years ago when I started going to therapy, I was like actually able to process those emotions more, I think. And then, yeah, start more of my spiritual journey about 3 years ago as well. And it's been really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, no, it's great. We just brought your dad into the conversation.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's sweet. Charming. Yeah. So now, how often do you see your family? If you're going to be are they still in Poway?
No, so not Poway, but my mom still lives here. So she lives in Encinitas now, actually she just moved down to Ocean Beach, but she lives in San Diego. She moved in with her partner down in Ocean Beach, but she still has a house at Encinitas. And so yeah, see my mom regularly. My brother also just moved back. So he went to the University of Washington in Seattle too. He moved back here and I see him pretty regularly now. My other brother lives in Denver, so I don't see him as much. But as a family, we definitely like get together and spend good time together, which is great.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, all the holidays, all that good stuff.
So let me go back to intuition.
Sure.
Yeah. When you have this, do you have intuition throughout the day? Not just with regard to your Madhouse and but the day-to-day things that you're doing now that are overshadowing you. Mm-hmm. Do you still feel intuitive? Do you have like a nature that keeps coming with some kind of probe and a feeling?
Yeah, definitely. I think I do randomly get those like downloads of something I should do. And sometimes when it's like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that, it's more from the cluttered mind. And other times I'm able to, I think it just depends on, have I taken the time for myself? Like, did I meditate that morning?
Yeah,
when I meditate in the morning, then that's when I get more of the intuition throughout the day. And when I wake up and immediately hop on my email and run to go do this and run to go do that, it's a lot more cluttered and less clear. But yeah, on the days when I do take care of myself and my sort of spiritual.
Yeah, on the days you do communion.
Yeah, exactly. Then
everything's
I get that
better
throughout the day. And I need to remember that that's how I'm most effective.
Yeah, that's because you're visiting an aspect of the self that wants to give you the directions that keep you on your dharmic world.
Yeah. So true.
So that's also intuition. Recognizing that.
Yeah.
That's why I asked.
Okay.
Yeah. That's very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're charming. You have this delight. You have a good buoyancy.
Thank you.
You bounce along really easy. And
that's how it feels just talking to you right now. I feel very light.
Yeah.
Buoyant.
Yeah.
I like that word.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way we're supposed to live.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, oftentimes environmental influences and things that are happening on planet Earth and how goofy people end up acting with each other, it's unfortunate. And then the cloud comes and things get heavy. And it feels like we're moving through molasses instead of angelically bouncing through celestial realm or something. But we're meant to be that effervescent the way you are. Yeah,
I love that word.
You're a good living example of that.
Thank you so much.
And it's relatively, when you started, what was the meditation that you started? What provoked you or prompted you or encouraged you to meditate?
The first sort of experience that I had with meditation was more through the lens of manifestation and this company called To Be Magnetic I heard of. And I really liked, I think my practical mind really liked the idea of meditating to get something, which sounds so like bad to say it that way now. But, like I wanted a career that I loved. I wanted to manifest a partner that I loved. And so that sort of reward aspect of it is what probably got me into it initially. And then just immediately after getting into it, you experience more of the reward right away. Is just how you feel on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's ultimately what it is you're changing yourself from within in my mind, to raise yourself to the level of the things that you want. And that was like, manifestation was basically the first sort of like peak that I had into meditation. And so I've since like just kind of done different things like to be magnetic. And then Joe Dispenza, I like listened to some of his stuff or whatever, and did some of his meditations. And mostly now it's just like, I just do sort of self stuff. Like I'll just put on binaural beats and try to tap back into that. But I go through phases in my life. Like right now I'm not meditating as much as I was this summer. And I think it's I know that I need to do it every day, because even if I'm in a good place, like right now, I feel like I'm in a really good place. And so I feel less urgency to go within. And when I'm like this summer, I was just like absolutely heartbroken and needed to like heal myself. And so I go through cycles, but I want meditation to become more daily consistent for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, all of it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the heartbroken without you?
I just went through a breakup that wrecked me. Yeah.
Got it. Well, your heart can't be broken, so you're fine.
Okay.
But just so you know.
Great.
It's just a statement you're making about the way you felt.
Sure.
But your heart cannot break.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Is that true?
Yes, of course.
Then what do you call it?
I think it's called the ego. Is the
Yeah.
The ego has been brutalized.
That's a great point.
All of a sudden, something you think you want is not there.
Yeah.
So, but the heart can't be broken.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a whole other discussion.
I
think one of the things that you just said is great about meditation. Oftentimes, I'll teach someone and they'll just take off. And their whole world's changing for the better. And all of a sudden, I'll see them months later and, hi, how you doing? And they, kind of cast their eyes downward and go, I got to tell you, I stopped meditating. And I go, it's fine. And they'll say, why do you think I would have ever stopped? And I give them the answer, and then they really get crushed. I said, because your desire to be happy, healthy, and harmonious isn't strong enough. That's what I'm saying to you right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're just look at what you described yourself as when you were utilizing, almost like a manifestation. If you want to manifest anything and you want to really be helpful, manifest world peace. Yeah, not your own individual needs being or cravings being fulfilled. That's, so, and you'll start with inner peace. Because you can't have world peace without more people having inner peace. It's not going to be possible. But what happens is oftentimes people stop because their desire is unconscious. Their desire to be happy, healthy, and harmonious isn't strong enough. And that sounds like it's an in-your-face, and it is. And just push it right back in someone's face. But I think the thing about manifestation and Joe Dispenza, I know who he is. I've listened to him. They're a little bit more. That's a little bit, in my view, less of a value. It has an individual value. Because you get what you want, or you manifest what you want. But that individuality has gone wild. But and it doesn't, just because someone wants to establish their individuality based on whether they see someone else stifling it, however it goes down, and they want to really focus on individuality. And there's a lot of conversation about you can be whoever you want. That's all true. But at the same time, if it's only individuality that's growing without universality, we cannot fix the issues that eventually will cripple the individuality on some level in the future.
Yeah,
because,
definitely.
Does that make sense?
I see that, yeah. I think to me, I'm also thinking about it as the individuality is, you're creating that inner peace for yourself, which, as you were saying earlier, everyone needs that inner peace to start working on all those bigger problems for everyone else too. It
needs to be the foundational platform. The basis of anything, any outside peace or world peace is inner peace. It's not a possible way. Individual nervous systems have to come under the governorship of a quality of inner peace.
Yeah.
What happens when people do certain kinds of manifestation techniques, they're now controlling an aspect. It's not being governed.
Yeah.
Inner peace, or the divine nature, if you want to go in that route, The divine nature, when it becomes established, it begins to govern according to its nature. And its nature is not like human nature. It doesn't have variability like we do. It has a few characteristics: unconditional love, no condemnation, no judgment, and pure, unequivocal understanding. Not intellectual understanding, compassionate understanding for the human foible, for the human issue. That's the nature of the divine, or inner peace. When that begins to be established as a foundation, the feeling, thought, speech, and action of the individual begins to be governed by that nature. That's what all the great seers and sages and characters and main stories are saying. How can I go from human to divine? Not how can I lose my life and go to the divine. It's how can I uncover the divine while I'm in human form so I can make the biggest contribution to myself and to others. That's the deal. That's the inner peace conversation. I may not use the divine nature the same. I'm using it with you because I think it works with you.
Yeah.
It's a nice word for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
Because,
that.
well, you percolate along that thread very clearly, right from the hallway. Yeah. I'm not surprised at all.
Thank you.
So, yeah. So I think it's great. I really enjoy being around you, and everyone else is going to too. So when you do your next iteration of Madhouse, it'll be successful on the basis of you just being yourself.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I got to remember that.
Yeah. Well, and then
That means a lot.
You want to
Thank
go
you.
back to your meditation as a basis to uncover, enliven, and expand the aspect that you like about yourself so much, which is not just the individual, because the individual is an expression of that. It's an expression in the differences. Individuality deals with differences. Universality deals with sameness. That's why it's so stable.
That's really cool.
Right. But individuality, when it's an expression or tethered to that, capital THAT, then the individual can do the dance, metaphorically speaking. Yeah.
And literally speaking.
Yes, exactly. Can do the dance without losing the universal because it's tethered to it. That's what I'm saying. The dance movement is best experienced by the individual and everyone else in the room. And you were saying that when that is established. So if you talk to Michael, what does he do for individuals? I do sit down and shut up.
Sit down.
With a very specific technique. So so I think it's this has been a great discussion.
Yeah,
Well,
I am loving it.
Yeah, we can do more of this at some point in the future. And I'd love to, is it mostly women or only women that come to your?
Mostly women. I would say 99%. And every now and then,
But
someone else will come.
But you use gay men. Why don't men come? Or why is it structured so that almost it's not offered to them, not consciously, but almost unconsciously or sociologically? That
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I think, part of it is my goal. My goal is to express feminine energy. Men have feminine energy. Everyone has masculine and feminine energy 100%. I think that just typically men don't see a dance class as with the goal of expressing feminine energy as something that they want to go to. And they just don't. I don't know. I for years I've seen I've seen Zumba classes. There's mostly all women in there. There's rarely men in there. I don't know if I think men just don't see dance as an outlet for them as much maybe. But for me, just in the context of Madhouse, something that really spoke to me as part of my purpose, and it happened really organically with Madhouse, was the element of sensuality and feminism and expressing your sexuality through dance. And I just wanted to give women a safe space to do that. So part of the language is in those classes, those Red Room classes, we do only allow women, non-binary, or anyone who wants to express that feminine. So I would never like question someone's sexuality or gender identity if they came into my studio. Whoever wants to be there, I want them to be there. But I want to prevent any unsafe situations. Like I've had someone come to the studio in the early days that was there for honestly just creepy and wrong reasons, you know, because this is a very vulnerable and just very new space for most women to be in. Most women that come up to me after and are like, I've never danced like this in my life, or I've never like felt safe to express this part of myself before. And I want to make sure that space stays that way. So the classes are certainly tailored for women. And that's because that's who I am. And that's what I think have expertise in, is expressing the feminine energy. And I want to make sure that anyone, whether it's a man or whatever, feels good to come express feminine energy. But I do think it is tailored specifically for women to do that. So yeah, most of the time, like our dance cardio classes, just the general dance cardio, men are allowed to come to those. It's just specifically the Red Room classes that are more of like the sensual dance is specifically meant for women.
So do you think you could ever have a men's class for sensual dance?
I don't see why not. I just don't. Most of the classes in the studio are classes that I could teach myself, and I don't know where I would begin with that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that, again, that's just not my area of expertise. I'm a never say never person. If I'm hearing that men want that kind of class.
Let me ask you a different way.
Sure.
Do you think men can be sensual dancers? Now, not dancers, because there's certainly a lot of dancers that can do sensual dance.
Yeah.
Men dancers that can do sensual dance. That I'm saying just men off the street, so to speak. Do you think, I'm asking if you think, sense, believe, have a notion that men could move sensually as a dance? Just, yeah. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Not to
I think
impress
so.
anybody, not to get anything, but that they would get something from moving sensually.
Yes, I 100% think that men could absolutely get something from moving sensually. I don't think I would know how to teach that class, so I would need to hire a man that could teach that class. Because it's more just, I know in my body, like the way I want to move to express, and I give my students the way that I want to move, and it also resonates with them. So for a class with men, I can't think of how I would choreograph that right now. But 100%, I think, and you see it, you know, again, if we're going back to that unhealthy, like, not that it's necessarily unhealthy, I guess, I don't know, I don't want to put negative words on it, but like if you go to a nightclub, like men are dancing sensually there, you know what I mean? Like usually always in the context of dancing with a woman. So I think that's why.
Or for a woman.
Or for a woman, yeah. And so I think that's why I want it to be just women, because I think men typically always think of, I don't want to overgeneralize here, but I guess this is a generalization. I think men think of sexuality as with a woman, and I think that they're less, this goes for men and women. I think people have a hard time embracing sexuality just within themselves and not in the context of with another person. And so the beauty of Madhouse is that they're dancing, these women are dancing for themselves without anyone else there for them.
Let me just say something. I'm going to ask something, I guess, and say something at the same time. I think there's a distinction between sensuality and sexuality.
Yeah.
That's the distinction that needs to be made in order for a man's class. That's my point.
Okay.
So that can men move sensually without having it be associated with sexuality? Because you can move sensually without it being associated with sexuality. That's what I'm saying.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Now, I don't know how you structure that.
Yeah.
I don't know how you scan at the door.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this guy, look at his sexual energy. It's off the charts. You're not getting in, pal. But, but I think, and the other thing is in terms of using women and sensuality in terms of a practical thing like dance, and excluding men, not excluding them, but maybe forming it more for women, is an assumption that should be challenged.
Sure.
for inside yourself occasionally. The reason I say this is because it's almost not an exercise, but a kind of a possibility of men becoming more androgynous, and women too. Because androgyny is the best place to be, because then you have both characteristics which were designed for. You're designed to have mother divine and father. You know, I mean, if you want to go into those kind of spiritual terms. And the more androgyny there is, the more, in a natural way, men and women would relate to each other more easily. Because you'd have a spontaneous understanding and acceptance of the differences. So that's an evolutionary possibility.
Yeah.
So I'm almost saying, when I think of what you do, I'm thinking of, at some point in time, considering that there would be a sensual, I don't know how you screen at the door, like I said, but that it would be men that would be interested in understanding sensuality.
Yeah.
And sensuality is not for women.
Yeah.
It's what the reason women might want to have more sensuality is because of the oppressive sexuality that's coming from men.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and so men need to be cleansed, but they need to be homogenized. And that takes, it could be dance is just one way. There's many ways I look at, can more of us as human beings become androgynous, which solves a lot of issues, by the way.
That's a great point.
It solves huge number of issues in the future and in other generations, not today.
Yeah.
But that's one of the reasons. I don't know if dance is an appropriate mechanism to stimulate that conversation and or that practical possibility.
Yeah.
But I sense it is, but that's just the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I love it. I think that that's so true. And absolutely, I think men should have an outlet to move in a way that's sensual. I think practically, if we're talking practical for my business, you know, every business has their niche, has their expertise. And for me, like, this is what I'm delivering to people. I only have so many hours a day that I can deliver a class. And when the demand is so high for these classes for women, that's what I'm going to focus on right now. And absolutely in the future, if there's enough demand for, you know, a men's sensuality class, and I can structure it in a way that's safe.
And you find a man to teach the class until it grows, and then you can combine the classes.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be decades.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? But I actually appreciate, this discussion, because, you know, I've thought about that a lot. Like, I don't want to ever feel like I'm excluding anyone that wants to explore that part of themselves.
I understand.
But the safe space is important for the women that I'm serving.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I get that. I'm just a vision of possibilities, you said.
It's powerful.
I think it's interesting. And of course, I would say all the way back to the beginning, and then I think we need to wrap up soon, but all the way back to the beginning, if you can source or Google or something, a Grateful Dead concert where they're looking at the audience, you'll see the androgyny I'm talking about.
That's awesome.
And they're all dancing. Everyone's moving. And they're all moving individually. No one's dancing with each other, and they're only dancing with a universal thread that's moving through. I've never seen that at any other. I don't go to any shows anymore, but in my day I did. It's a long day ago, but I did. And but there's nothing like that in terms of the music and dancing.
I love that.
Yeah. And also whirling dervishes. I don't know if they're all men, but largely they're men. They're not women. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and when they're whirling and dancing, and you can Google that as well, there is no gender.
Yeah.
I mean, physically there's a gender.
Right.
I mean, because they may be stronger or something. You might see they're stronger. But there's no gender. They're whirling way far away from that, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And it's a great point. I love the conversation of androgyny, because I feel like I have a lot of masculine energy as a woman too, and I always have. And dance, and especially as I've created Madhouse, has allowed me to bring out my feminine energy a lot more than I ever have in my life. So now I have this like blend of the two. And just yesterday in my class, I was telling my class, all right, with this next one, we're going to bring out the masculine energy a little bit more. And so I do feel like it is a class where we're pulling masculine energy in some areas and feminine energy in some areas, and each dance serves a different purpose. And I love feeling like I'm in my masculine energy sometimes. Like a lot of hip hop is very much like that. You know, you see hip hop classes like we're wearing baggy pants and baggy, clothes, and it just feels right. And you can channel almost different parts of yourself and different characters in a way, which is really cool.
Well, I see the sign on the door now.
Huh?
I can see the sign on the door. The sign on the door says, "Welcome, men. No creeps allowed."
That's all I really need. That's all I really need. I'm just trying to figure out a way to make that happen.
I'm teasing. This is great. It was a joy to meet you.
Yeah, you too. This was
from
awesome.
the hallway introduction to now, there's been no change.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I try to.
Well, you just
be
are.
authentic.
You are who you are.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I see
you
it
too.
the same way. Yeah, good. I look forward to seeing you in the future, and we'll talk some. Yeah.
I could talk about this stuff all day. This is awesome.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
I love.
Me too.
I think sometimes I don't have the vocabulary, but even just hearing you talk is like giving me more ideas and more things to talk about. And yeah, I feel very alive.
We'll talk about meditation.
Cool.
Yeah, that'll be the foundational thing. We'll do that. So we'll
Awesome.
stay in touch. We'll get, what do you call it? Contact information.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome.
It's
Thank you so much, Michael.
contact information. That sounds so harsh. Give me your contact information. Oh, Jesus, God.
I'll give it to you.
It was a pleasure.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Olivia. Do you know what Olivia means, the word, the name?
From my understanding, when I was a kid, I think I was told it means piece of the olive tree, but maybe it means something else. I don't know.
No, that sounds
Piece of the olive tree.
Yeah, Olivia. Yeah, great. There you are. You're a living expression of peace from the olive tree.
I love
There
it.
you are. It's beautiful. Thank you.
I'm a tree.
We'll do this again. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. My pleasure.
So
Thank you.
fun.